Some years ago, I had the strange experience of reading a file that the Stasi, the East German secret police, had compiled on me when I lived in East Berlin. It contained minute-by-minute accounts of where I'd been and who I'd met, as well as photographs taken by a concealed camera. These days, we all have files full of far more detailed personal information. What's more, we compile them ourselves. You probably carry around in your pocket a state-of-the-art surveillance device. It's called a mobile phone. Add to that all your emails, the complete history of your online searches and your Facebook page, and you have a file beyond a Stasi general's wildest dreams. Most of that data is held by mobile phone companies and the big internet platforms, so some people now detect the face of Big Brother in Facebook and Google.
Ich heiße Timothy Garton Ash. Ich bin geborener Londoner.
I once spoke at a Speaker's Corner type event about free speech at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin.
Habe auch viele Jahre in Berlin
sponsored by Google. Then someone piped up from the crowd suggesting that the biggest threat to free speech is actually Google.
Wird die Meinung durch den PageRank von Google bestimmt und
I don't think the Google PR man was best pleased. As Edward Snowden revealed, phone companies and internet platforms have also shared vast amounts of data with American and British security agencies. A basic characteristic of the internet age is that it's become much easier to make things public and more difficult to keep them private. The ease of sharing things publicly is a huge gain for free speech. We can all be authors and publishers now. But the loss of privacy is also a free speech issue. Judges have long wrestled to strike the right balance between one person's right to privacy and someone else's right to speak freely about that person. When is exposure in the public interest? When is it a gross violation of privacy? That's privacy balanced against free speech. But privacy is also a precondition for free speech. Brian Cathcart, Professor of Journalism at Kingston University.
I think it's absolutely crucial that we are able to have conversations which are personal and not shared with the world against our will. There is a difference between speaking publicly and speaking privately. We need to be able to test our ideas. We need to be able to share and think and learn without it being an on-the-record process. These things are all contingent on some levels of privacy.
That's exactly right. The poet W.H. Auden once observed that if men knew what women said about them in private, the human race would die out. We might ask how he, a man, knew that, but we take the poetic truth. Whatever free speech rightly means, it does not mean that what you thought you were whispering only to the man or woman who shares your bed is revealed the next day against your will, purely for the titillation of millions of newspaper readers. That's pretty much what happened to Max Mosley, the former head of the governing body for Formula One racing and son of the British fascist Oswald Mosley. He woke up one day to find a banner headline on the front page of the News of the World saying he had enjoyed a Nazi orgy with 5 hookers. As he recalls, the experience was traumatic for his wife and children.
Well, my wife's first reaction was she thought I had the paper printed as a joke, as the sort of thing I might do, a sort of thing, you know, obviously she knowing nothing that this was actually happening. But then, of course, I had to explain, no, it wasn't a joke. She was unhappy. To see those sort of pictures of your father, acutely embarrassing, and they're not only embarrassing for you as the child, but also all your friends knowing, everybody knows. It's about as embarrassing as you can think of.
He sued the News of the World and won because the Nazi part was totally untrue and the whole story had been a salacious setup. A video camera actually recorded a News of the World journalist instructing one of the girls to try to lure Mosley into making a Nazi salute. The experience turned him into a passionate campaigner for privacy.
The fact is that something which should not have been made public has been made public, and no judge on earth and no court on earth can make it private again. The point is that the damage, once it's done, is irreparable. My privacy will never, ever be restored.
Once it's gone for good, like an ancient oak cut down by a property developer. Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, had a similar experience when paparazzi snapped shots of her sunbathing topless at a private house in the south of France. These were published by a French magazine called Closer. Its editor, Laurence Piot, defends the decision to publish with Gallic insouciance and journalistic humbug.
Je crois qu'il faut dédramatiser un peu ces images parce que y a des réactions un peu disproportionnées autour de ces...
One shouldn't over-dramatise these pictures. The reactions are a little disproportionate. She's a princess of the 21st century. They're on the terrace of a mansion in the south of France, which is not far from a road along which cars pass without any problem. They're visible from the street. They're a young couple in love, just like the ones who can be seen on all the beaches of France and the world.
The royal couple secured an injunction in the French courts, but Danish and Swedish magazines swiftly followed Italian and Irish rags in republishing. What's more, I just Googled Kate Middleton topless and was able to find some of the photos with 2 clicks. The paparazzi are laughing all the way to the bank, and the wife of a future king has in practice no effective redress. Welcome to the age of the internet. Royal photographer Niraj Tanna is clear that those covert snaps crossed the line.
Yes, with these pictures of Kate being photographed with long lenses in France, that is a total invasion of privacy, and I can see that. You have to justify that. There has to be a public interest. Royals shooting at Sandringham, I think there is a certain element of public interest when they're shooting animals for fun. Long lenses are needed there. They see it as, they have a reasonable expectation of privacy on Sandringham. It's a private estate. I think it's fair game.
Well, I'd like to hear Prince Philip's response to that. It probably couldn't be broadcast on a family programme. But the photographer goes to the key point. Judges, journalists and politicians all agree that the individual's reasonable expectation of privacy has to be balanced against the public interest. My own guiding principle for this area is we must be able to protect our privacy and to counter slurs on our reputations, but not prevent scrutiny that is in the public interest. That immediately raises the question, what is the public interest? Editors are always tempted to interpret it as meaning what interests the public, and therefore sells more copies or brings more eyeballs to their website. Politicians, by contrast, sometimes invoke privacy to cover up things that the public really should know. The BBC's editorial guidelines struggle to define it. Here's an excerpt.
It includes, but is not confined, to exposing or detecting crime, exposing significantly antisocial behaviour, preventing people from being misled by some statement or action of an individual or organisation, disclosing information that assists people to better comprehend or make decisions on matters of public importance.
As with everything to do with free speech, so much depends on context. Suppose, for example, that nearly 20 years ago you'd invested £10,000 in a unit trust set up by your father and registered offshore. 6 years ago you sold your holding at a nice profit and paid all the tax. Would there be a public interest in revealing that detail of your family finances? I think not. But suppose you're the Prime Minister and you've been outspoken in criticising tax avoidance, which often uses offshore trusts. Then, many would argue, there is a public interest. This is, of course, the real case of David Cameron. He went on to publish summaries of his tax returns for the last 6 years, the first time a British Prime Minister has ever done so. But over in Norway, everybody has their tax returns published online. Here's a further complication. What people generally think should be private varies greatly from country to country. For example, The Germans are quite relaxed about people sunbathing in the nude in designated areas of public parks, but very suspicious of CCTV cameras, partly because of their Nazi and Stasi past. We, by contrast, have more CCTV cameras than anyone else, as many as 6 million, according to one estimate. But don't try stripping off in Hyde Park. Yet in a connected world, this world of neighbours created by the internet, what's published in one place is instantly visible in many others. So who decides what may be published in a country called Facebook, with a population larger than that of China, or on YouTube? The harm caused by spontaneous transmission online can be very serious. In 2010, an 18-year-old student at Rutgers University, Tyler Clementi, was covertly filmed by his roommate as he became intimate with another man. The roommate streamed the video from his computer's webcam for all the world to see. Distraught, Tyler jumped off the George Washington Bridge into the Hudson River and killed himself. His farewell message on Facebook read simply, "Jumping off the GW Bridge. Sorry." In the Internet age, the responsibility for setting the bounds of privacy lies as much with us and the Internet giants as it does with government and the law. So how do we find our bearings in this jungle where norms of privacy are constantly shifting between country, culture, generation and context? The detail may be complicated, but the guiding principles are not. We've already established one. A genuine public interest overrides our right to privacy in respect of certain kinds of information in a specific context. Beyond that, in the vast territories where there's no legitimate public interest, only the prurience of the voyeur and the greed of the paparazzi, there's a second simple principle. You decide. You decide what you want to share with me, and I decide what I want to share with you. This brings us back to where we started, with Nina Simone and the fundamental case for free expression.
I wish you could know what it means to be me.
I wish you could know what it means to be me. The right to free expression is a right to express what I want to, but also not to express it if I don't want to, subject only to that exception for the public interest. It provides for the robust freedom of what's said, but also for the delicacy of the unspoken. Privacy and free speech are therefore at the deepest level not enemies but allies and friends. They're two sides of the same golden coin, and the currency of that coin is civilization.
Free Speech was presented by Timothy Garton Ash, and the producer was Nina Robinson.